What is going on, everybody? Welcome to another gear setup video. So last video was Bandos melee setups, and in this video we're going to be checking out the Bandos God Wars dungeon best in slot and cheap ranged tank setups and ranged DPS setups. So without further ado, let's get going. Now the first thing that we're going to get into is going to be the ranged tank setups, and I want to start off by saying I do not recommend tanking Bandos in ranged gear. Yes, it can be done, and some people do it, but from my personal experiences, a melee tank is always going to be better than a ranged tank because the defense bonuses can be so much higher, and it's literally just a given that melee tanks are always going to be better than ranged tanks. But maybe you don't have the melee gear to tank, so you want to do range. Well, it can be done, and we're going to check it out right now. So as for your best in slot tank setup for ranging, our gear is going to be a Verax helm, a ranging cape, which you can only obviously use if you have 99 range, but the reason you want to use this is because it does give defense bonuses as well as prayer bonuses. But if you don't have this, obviously an assembler will do. Amulet of Fury, I am using Dragon Diamond Bolts as my ammunition, an Armadillo crossbow, Armadillo chestplate, the Elysian Spirit Shield in the shield slot because it does have that defense and damage reduction perk that it comes along with, the Verax plate skirt, Barrow's gloves, Guardian boots, and a Ring of Suffering imbued. The Guardian boots will act as your Bandos item as they are created with Bandos boots, so you won't have to worry about getting attacked in the chamber while you might be hunting or waiting for a room to become available. Now this setup is obviously asking for a lot because at the time of this video, the Elysian Spirit Shield is around 970 million GP. So if you can't afford that, you obviously could replace it with a Dragonfire Shield or something like a Crystal Shield, which are considerably less viable here, especially for a range tank, but you can do it if you want. Over in the inventory, we have a set of Guthans. You always want to bring Guthans to Bandos. It will extend your trips by a ton. 4 normal ranging potions, 8 super restores, 9 Saradomin brews, hammer to get into the room, although you can acquire one while you're there from the goblins or whatever. I usually just bring one with me. It's easier, less hectic. Bones to Peaches tablets for some more sustain, and 2 Trollheim teleports. The reason you have 2 is 1, you can teleport there, and then after you are there, you can revert the Trollheim teleport back to a house teleport to get yourself out. As for the total gear cost for this particular setup, 1.059 billion. I have never used this setup myself, but I do know people that have, and they like it, but I think it takes a unique kind of person to actually want to tank Bandos in range gear. So it is entirely up to you, but this is how you could do it if you have best in slot gear. Moving into our cheap tank setup, once again, I do not recommend tanking Bandos in range because it's much more viable for melee, but if it's all you got, by all means go for it. So as for our gear setup, Verax helmet in the helmet slot, Ava's assembler, but if you only have an accumulator, you could use that. And obviously, if you have 99 range, use the range cape. Amulet of Fury, Diamond, Dragon Bolts Enchanted, a Dragon crossbow. They are only about 1.6 mil now, so it's pretty easily affordable. You could use a rune crossbow if you're really trying to keep costs down, but Dragon is pretty easily affordable. Blessed Bandos D'hide top, a crystal shield in the shield slot, Verax plate skirt, Barrow's gloves, once again, Guardian boots for the Bandos item. You could also opt to swap out the Blessed D'hide body with a Zamorak Blessed D'hide body, and that will keep the Zamorak minions off you. I personally never have a problem with the Zami minions, so entirely up to you. And in the ring slot, an imbued granite ring, which will give you additional defense bonuses. So this one here, the defense bonuses are okay. 308 to stab, 303 to slash, 312 to crush, and 336 to ranged. You'll also get a little bit of magic defense for the magic minion, but still, I don't agree with this setup, but I'm putting it out there for you guys just so everybody can see that you actually can do this. Over in the inventory, slightly different than the best in slot tank setup. So for this one, we are still going to have our Guthan's armor in there for healing on the minions after each Bandos kill, 4 regular ranging potions, 10 Saradomin brews, 7 super restores, your hammer, Bones to Peaches, and your 2 Trollheim teleports. You're going to inevitably take more damage in this cheaper tank setup. I will once again reiterate, I do not recommend doing this, but here is the setup if you do want to give it a try. So this one, obviously the more brews because of the more damage. So there's that. Total gear cost for this one is going to only be 10.3 mil. So in retrospect, it is very affordable for people that might be balling on a budget. So if this is your only option, give it a shot. All right, next setups are going to be the DPS setups, and these are absolutely the most viable DPS setups that you can use at Bandos. Range DPS is better than melee DPS at Bandos, so these are very important. If you're looking to get the most kills in your team at Bandos, you're going to want to be using a ranged setup. So first up is going to be the best in slot DPS setup. For this one, our gear is going to be the full Armadillo set, the helmet, the chest plate, and the chain skirt. Ava's Assembler, Necklace of Anguish, a Bandos Blessing to keep the Bandos minions off of us, a Toxic Blowpipe, Barrow's Gloves, Pegasian Boots, and an Archer's Ring imbued. Now, I want to throw this little fact out here. If you had iron darts in your blowpipe, yes, iron darts, the iron darts in a blowpipe will actually out DPS a Grazi Rapier at Bandos. That's pretty crazy, right? So imagine using better darts. At a minimum, you want to use adamant darts at Bandos with either DPS setup, this one or the cheap one, which I'm going to show you next, because of their immense damage output. Now, me personally, I always use rune darts or better at Bandos. Obviously, I have the bank to support it, but adamant darts are very cheap and they're very good DPS at Bandos. So even if you can't afford rune or dragon darts at Bandos, adamant darts will more than get the job done here. Over in the inventory, you will notice no brews because, well, if you have a good tank and a good team, you will absolutely not need brews with this setup. You have a full set of Guthans to heal on the minions, and pairing this, also you can use the Toxic Blowpipe special attack for more heals on the minions. So you have a couple of ways to keep your health up. As for the rest, Bandos Godsword. I'd rather have this and not need it than need it and not have it. Now, regardless of whether you're going to hit super often or not, it's still nice to have just to try to lower the defense of Bandos. So I have tried this setup out myself and it works perfectly for me. I don't hit super high with the Bandos Godsword and I don't hit super often, but when I do, it's very nice to have for your trips. 6 Bastion Potions. These are the divine ones. They last 5 minutes each, and these will give you defense as well as ranging levels. 9 Super Restore Potions. And your trips will be really long with this setup, up to 2 hours with your Bastion Potions. 4 Anglerfish for emergency eats, your hammer. As a DPSer at Bandos, you want to have high-level alchemies with you so you can pick up the rune drops, alch them, and just have a cash stack to split for your team later. That way you're not leaving drops on the ground. Once again, bones to peaches and your 2 Trollheim tabs. As for the total gear cost of this setup, 142.1 million GP. So in the grand scheme of things, 142.1 mil compared to a best in slot melee setup with a Scythe of Vitor, which obviously costs a lot of money to use with the blood runes and the charges. This is very affordable for a pretty large part of the RuneScape community. So best in slot DPS compared to melee for ranged, definitely want to go with ranged over melee as much as you possibly can. For our last setup here, we are going to be checking out the cheap range DPS setup, and this one is considerably cheaper than best in slot, and you'll still put out pretty close to the same amount of damage for a lot less GP. For this one, Bandos Coif, Ava's Assembler, but if you only have an accumulator, obviously that'll work. Amulet of Fury, Zamorak Blessing, Toxic Blowpipe with at least adamant darts in it, Carol's top and bottom, Barrow's Gloves, Blessed Bandos Boots, and an Archer's Ring imbued. Now, I went with the Bandos Coif and the boots for this because they tend to run a little bit cheaper than all the other God Coifs and boots, so you can pick those up for a little bit less money. And this way you will also have Bandos and Zamorak items with you. You might take a little bit more damage from the roaming monsters before you actually get into the Bandos room, so better to have those with the cheaper DPS setup. Over in the inventory, once again, our set of Guthans. We also have the Bandos Godsword in there. Maybe get some lucky special attacks off. 5 Bastion Potions, 4 Ceradomin Brews, 8 Super Restores, 2 Anglerfish, Hammer, Rune Pouch with high alchemies in it, Bones to Peaches tablets for more sustain, and your 2 Trollheim teleports. Now this one, you do have considerably less defense with this setup compared to the Armadillo setup and whatever else. So the 4 brews actually do come in handy. I have tested this setup out myself, and I can usually stay even longer than my supplies will actually last. So, but that also all depends on having a decent team with you. So for this final setup, your total gear cost for the cheaper DPS setup is about 23.7 million GP at the time of this video. So everybody, that is going to do it for the Bandos God Wars Dungeon ranged gear setup video. I hope that you have learned something from this. I have tested out almost all of these myself, and they have all worked admirably for me. So give it a shot. Let me know what you think in the comments below if you have tried this. If you like the video, please leave a thumbs up down below. And if you haven't done so yet, tap the subscribe button on your way out. If you want to further support the channel, you can join it as a channel member. It will give you exclusive access to community, channel member only posts, and in-game events and games with me. So you can check that out if you want. With that, I will see you guys on the next video. Take it easy, everybody.